Welcome back to our channel. Today we share the heartwarming story of Diem and Toan as they welcome their first son, baby Jack, into the world. A moment filled with tears, laughter, and overwhelming love. From the first miraculous cry that made their family burst with joy, to Diem holding Jack skin to skin, feeling the warmth of motherhood for the very first time, and the family sharing an unforgettable golden afternoon together, every second is pure magic. Hit that subscribe button and join us as we dive into this unforgettable journey of love, family, and new beginnings. The morning light poured gently through the hospital window, wrapping everything in a calm, golden hue that seemed to bless this sacred day. Toan paced the hallway, his palms damp with nervous sweat, his heart thundering louder with every cry that echoed faintly from the delivery room. Time felt painfully slow, as though the world had paused to wait for the most precious sound he would ever hear. Inside, Diem, exhausted but determined, clung to every breath, her hands gripping the sheets as the doctors and nurses moved swiftly around her. She had waited 9 months for this moment, a moment that now balanced between agony and miracle. Her love for the tiny life inside her gave her strength beyond measure. And then it happened. The cry, a soft, trembling sound that grew into a powerful wail, filling the room with life. The nurse smiled through her mask and said gently, "It's a boy." For a split second, Diem forgot all the pain. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as tears streamed down her face, tears not of exhaustion, but of indescribable joy. The baby's cry pierced through the walls, reaching Toan and his mother, Hui, who were waiting outside. Toan froze. His breath caught in his throat, his knees weakened, and in that instant, he felt the world shift beneath him. His son was here. His son had arrived. The door opened and the nurse appeared, her eyes shining as she held a small, swaddled bundle in her arms. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "Your wife and son are both healthy." Hui pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed, her eyes filling with tears that glistened like morning dew. Toan stepped forward on trembling legs, unable to speak, only able to gaze at the tiny face, barely visible beneath the white blanket. A quiet sob escaped his lips. "My son," he whispered, the words almost breaking. His mother gently touched his shoulder, her voice trembling. "Toan, you're a father now." He smiled through his tears, nodding slowly, as though the weight of those words carried all the meaning in the world. Behind the door, Diem's soft voice could be heard calling his name, and Toan felt something awaken deep within him, a love so pure, so fierce that it brought him to his knees. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every anxious thought from the past months suddenly made sense. He turned to his mother, eyes shining, and said softly, "We did it, Mom. Diem did it." In that moment, surrounded by the scent of newborn life and the hum of quiet joy, Toan realized he was witnessing the beginning of everything. The first cry of his son wasn't just the sound of life, it was the sound of love being born anew, stronger than anything he had ever known. Inside the softly lit room, the world seemed to stand still. The nurses moved gently, their voices hushed as if afraid to disturb the sacred silence that followed new life. Diem lay back on the bed, her face pale but glowing with a quiet strength that only a mother could possess. Her hair clung to her forehead, her eyes half closed from exhaustion. But when the nurse approached and whispered, "He's ready to meet you," Diem opened her eyes, and in them shone a light that outshone everything else. The nurse lowered the small bundle into Diem's arms, then carefully unwrapped the top of the blanket. A tiny face, pink and soft as rose petals, appeared before her. The moment their skin touched, Diem felt something awaken inside her, a warmth that spread from her heart to every corner of her being. The nurse gently placed the baby on Diem's chest, letting his bare skin rest against hers. The room filled with the faint sound of the baby's soft breathing, the steady rhythm of two hearts finding each other for the first time. Diem looked down at her son, her little Jack, as his tiny fingers curled instinctively against her skin. He was so small, so impossibly fragile, yet in that moment, he carried the weight of her entire world. She could feel his warmth, smell the sweet new scent of his skin, and she wept, not from pain, but from overwhelming love. Every hardship, every sleepless night, every fear dissolved as she held him closer. She whispered softly through her tears, "Welcome home, my love." Toan stood beside the bed, his heart aching at the sight before him. He had thought he understood love when he first met Diem, but now, watching her cradle their newborn son, he realized love was far deeper, purer, and more profound than he had ever imagined. He reached out, brushing his hand across Diem's hair, and leaned down to kiss her forehead. "You did it," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You're incredible." Diem smiled weakly, her gaze never leaving the baby's face. "He's perfect, Toan," she murmured. The baby squirmed slightly, letting out a small sound that made them both laugh softly through their tears. Toan's eyes glistened as he carefully touched Jack's tiny hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around his father's finger, holding on with surprising strength, as if to say, "I'm here. I belong to you." At that moment, everything outside the hospital walls ceased to exist. There was no noise, no worry, no fear, only love. The soft rhythm of Jack's breathing filled the air, blending with Diem's heartbeat beneath him. It was the purest connection imaginable. Mother and child, skin to skin, heart to heart. And as Toan stood there, watching the woman he loved hold their son for the very first time, he knew this was the happiest moment of his life, the beginning of a new story, one written not in words, but in love. The afternoon sun had begun to fade, casting a soft amber glow across the hospital room. Everything felt calm now. The chaos, the pain, the rush of emotions had quieted into a peaceful stillness that wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Diem lay resting, her baby nestled safely in her arms. Jack's tiny chest rose and fell with steady, fragile breaths, his small hand still clutching her finger. Toan sat close beside her, his arm around her shoulders, while his mother, Ly, stood near the bed, her eyes never leaving her grandson. For a long while, no one spoke. The only sounds were the rhythmic beeps of the monitor and the occasional soft coo from baby Jack. Ly's heart swelled as she looked at them. Her son, now a father, her daughter-in-law, now a mother. She had waited her whole life to see this moment, and now that it was here, she couldn't stop her tears from falling. Slowly, she stepped closer, her trembling hand reaching out to gently touch Jack's little cheek. "He looks just like you did, Toan," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Toan smiled, his throat tight, his voice nearly breaking. "He's more like Diem. Look at that nose." Diem laughed weakly, her eyes glistening with tears, and for the first time that day, the room filled with gentle laughter. the kind that comes from love, relief, and gratitude. The nurse entered quietly, checking on them, then smiled at the sight of the family. "He's a strong little boy," she said warmly before slipping back out, leaving them alone in their bubble of joy. Toan turned back to his wife, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Thank you," he said, his voice hushed but full of meaning, "for giving me this family, for giving me him." Dim looked up at him, her smile soft, her eyes heavy with affection. "No," she murmured, "thank you for never leaving my side." Jack stirred slightly, his tiny face scrunching as he let out a soft sigh before settling again against his mother's chest. Dim kissed the top of her head, inhaling that tender scent only newborns have, a scent that seemed to whisper promises of tomorrow. Toan leaned closer, resting his forehead gently against Dim's, and in that quiet moment, time stopped. Thwy watched them, her eyes shimmering, and whispered a silent prayer of thanks. The child before her was not just a grandchild. He was a new beginning, a continuation of love that would carry through generations. She smiled, her heart full, knowing that from this day on, nothing would ever be the same. The room glowed with golden light as the three of them sat together, Dim, Toan, and baby Jack, surrounded by warmth, peace, and love. Outside, the world went on, but inside that small room, life had changed forever. A family had been born, and in that perfect, fleeting moment, they all knew this was the truest happiness they would ever know.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Nhìn Tử Diễm Review. Vậy là trong tập phim ngày hôm nay của chúng ta thì Diễm cùng với Toàn, mẹ Toàn và chị gái của Toàn là chị Thúy đã chào đón đứa con chào đời của Diễm và Toàn, đó chính là một bé trai bé Jack. Khoảnh khắc khi mà y tá bế bé Jack ra và để cho áp ra với mẹ, đó là khoảnh khắc mà Diễm sẽ không bao giờ quên. Mọi tình tiết hấp dẫn sẽ còn được kể ở các video tiếp theo. Các bạn hãy bấm vào nút đăng ký kênh để nhận được thông báo mới nhất về các tập phim sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh Lý Tử Diễm Review nha. Đặc biệt là hãy bấm nút like, nút chia sẻ và để lại bình luận ở dưới video để giúp cho video của mình tăng được lượt tương tác nhé. Cảm ơn, xin chào và hẹn gặp lại. Bye bye.